Hunters. Life on the blockchain.
Welcome back to Bounty Hunters Life on the Blockchain. We are here, episode 29. Oh, yeah. And we are sponsored by ImmuneFi, the top place to find some bugs. What else could I say about ImmuneFi? Other than it's like the most popular place for a bounty hunter because they have, I think, the most protocols listed and the biggest bounties on there. And it's a really good experience. I've been hunting there since I started, and I've submitted my the most amount of bugs on there out of all bugs possibly submitted. So if you're just starting, if you're already hunting, go to ImmuneFi. Let the hunt choose you. But it's great. You got to check it out. Also sponsored by Rare Skills. Rareskills.io/riptide will get you 10% off a boot camp if you want to level up your Uniswap v3 knowledge or maybe some ZK moon math. They got it all for you. Anyway, today, episode 29, we have j4x on the podcast. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. How are you?
I am fantastic, man. We're both early in the morning here. I got some coffee, a morning podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Excellent. I have this pregnant cat right now that woke me up. Woke me up 3 times last night to eat food. Like, it's crazy how much this stupid cat would eat food. So I'm a little rough, man, but I'm good. So Mr. J4X, we met in Singapore at the amazing CrabFest. Do you want to brag about how amazing that CrabFest was to everyone?
The CrabFest was awesome. So the CrabFest is always one of my favorites when coming to Singapore. And I'm a huge sucker for seafood. And as you might know, I'm based in Central Europe. So there's not too much seafood around, and especially not too much good seafood around. So every time I come to Asia and I get something like this, I'm just in heaven.
Oh man, get that MSG crab. Oh, that was good. And then we had like every popular security researcher was there that you'd ever see. Like, everybody was there.
Yeah, it was like a crossover, like kind of like the Avengers crossover, which happens from time to time. So I feel like at every of the big conferences, so either ECC or DEF CON, you have at least like one event where suddenly like everyone shows up, and it's awesome. So I love going to the conferences for those, just because like at the start you get to meet everyone, and then as soon as you know everyone, it's just like meeting up with like your old friends or old school class or whatever, and like everyone is around, everyone is having fun, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and I noticed that when you meet these people in person, obviously their personalities are all unique, but everyone's really cool. No one's,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, there's some, maybe I'll say 1 or 2 outliers where they have some strange qualities about them, but but where it's kind of like I don't know, it was a weird meeting, but everyone else was, 99% of people are really cool and just really cool people, and everyone's on their own basically, which I think is another benefit of this. And a lot of people are independently, not say wealthy, but rich enough to kind of just do what they want to do, and they're really good at what they do. So I think you get that honesty, at least from my perspective, that it's hard to get. Like, if you imagine go to a networking meetup, which I've been to back in the day when people had all these jobs, and you don't get any honesty. It's just fake.
Yeah, I used to compare it to like before I started auditing, I was working in like a very traditional big German tech company, and like trips there for work, you go there, you have to take care of what you're saying, you don't want to say offend anyone by accident, you have to be nice to everyone, you shouldn't drink more than 2 beers because otherwise you would say something dumb. And here it's just like you're hanging out with friends, everyone's liking each other, like it's just such a chill experience, and that makes it so much more fun. Although the people, if you would compare it to like a traditional company, a lot more further along their career or more successful, but they care even less, which is kind of funny because that's what you wouldn't think when you're coming from like a traditional background, where you would think like, oh, these people are so successful, so important, like I have to wear a suit and a tie and like not say a single word that's wrong, and actually like the people just show up in jogging pants and no one cares, and you're just joking around, having fun, and that
Yeah,
makes it so much
the
more enjoyable.
the more popular and more richer any bug hunter gets, like the humbler they become
Yeah,
until you're at max humbleness.
yeah,
The number
100%.
one guy. Yeah, I don't know any other place like this. How cool! We're so lucky.
For for sure, man. For sure, man. Like I love this space and the people I've met through it. So even if I would earn like 10% of what I make right now, I probably still wouldn't leave, just because I enjoy working with the people so much. Because just everyone seems to have kind of a similar point of view than me, and like plans as me. So it's just like you meet a lot of friends through this, not even just colleagues, but people that have the same way of thinking, and this just makes it even more valuable.
That's a good point, because we all realize that we all have the same interests. Like because we're all focused on this for a lot of hours during the day,
Hmm.
and money is secondary, or else you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be this good. And so everyone's like really geeking out about the same stuff, and do try to find a place other than like a hobby club where, like, I don't know, maybe you're all into like RC cars or something. You're all playing with that, but this like combines a lot of technical know-how plus um, all the other aspects, negotiation, everything that comes with winning these bounties, picking it, and then on top of that, um, you're also making some good money too. So like you have this weird combination of like, hey, fuck you, do whatever I want, and then this guy's really cool to talk to you. We're all interested in the same thing, and you end up with this group of people and these conversations that I haven't really found replicated elsewhere.
No, same for me. So especially if you compare it to a traditional job, you would say probably 80% of people in a traditional job actually hate their job and just do it for the money. And you don't really have that here. So I
Yeah.
think that's also because for most of us, I think there's probably still like 5% who don't like it and just do it for the money. But most of the people just really enjoy the job. So it's something you can connect in your free time about. And like both people are enjoying talking about it compared to someone, I don't know, like shifting around Excel sheets and
Oh
like
fuck.
being happy to get home after that. He definitely won't go for beers with his friends after and be geeking out about Excel sheets.
Yeah, don't give me flashbacks about Excel. My God, I was a banker in the past. I know. Hey, so interesting kind of background you have. So I did some due diligence, as they would say back in the banking days,
Awesome.
and looks like you knew your shit. You've competed. I would say you're more a contest guy, contest audit guy, rather than bug hunting. Am I right?
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
I started out with contests, went like really hard on that for like I would say about a year, a bit more than a year. And already at the end of that, I started working a lot more with agencies. So that kind of shifted my focus away. And like for the last 1 year to 1.5 years, I've been mostly working with agencies, like jumping into a contest somewhere in between. I think I only did like one this year so far, but yeah, mostly agency work now.
So, and by agencies, you mean just dealing directly with protocols, or are you like doing subcontracting through other audit firms?
For me, it's mostly working with the teams at Spearbit or
Okay.
Zenith, Sherlock. So all the I just call them agencies. I don't know if that's the correct term for them or not. That kind of play the middleman for you and connect you to the protocols, set up teams, and do the private audits. Because I have to be honest, I'm a really techie guy, so I genuinely enjoy looking at code, finding bugs. What I don't enjoy that much is marketing and like
Hmm.
going out, having to sell myself to people, which is definitely something I can put more effort in the next year and learn more about. But for me, like the fun part is the sitting in front of code for 10 hours a day. And when working with these teams, you can kind of just focus on that. They take care of everything else besides that, which makes it a pretty good synergy for me.
That's a very good point, and you're not the only one. I've heard of plenty of guys that just don't like to do anything but that, and there's options just like that. I mean, you could do exactly what you're doing. You could just look at code, get paid for it, and guys love that, man, because the marketing, staying in touch with the clients, following up, this and that is a different skill set that some people just don't like doing. And if you don't like doing it, you treat that as like laborious work that you detest. Hey, stick with what you're doing. I mean, it's so cool that you can pick and choose kind of which path you want to take.
Yes, for sure. I think that's also like deciding between like super specializing on one topic or becoming kind of a multitask guy that knows everything good but nothing perfectly. And I think both strategies are valid. So you can be a 7 out of 10 auditor and also be a 7 out of 10 marketer and live really good off of that, because you kind of cut out the middleman. And like, even if you charge lower rates, you still get more because you're not paying percentages to an agency.
Mm-hmm.
Or you go like full in on the auditing thing, say, okay, I give that percentage off. And like, I think both of those strategies work. I think it really just depends on what's your interest. And for me, for example, I love going to these conferences, meeting people, but I love just hanging out with them, not having to sell anyone, like just making friends for making friends, not making friends for later on selling them like some service or making that. Because then I think it definitely works, but it's a bit harder for me because then I always have to kind of have this in the back of my mind. And like this, like it's currently, it's just like I get the weekend in, I don't know, Singapore, for example. I hang out with my friends, go to Universal Studios, get good food, go out. And there's no second thought I have to have about who I'm selling stuff to and which leads I have to follow up on, etc. Which is funny
Exactly.
because I was working in this kind of direction before. So
Yeah, and you realize you didn't prefer it.
yes,
Definitely.
yes,
I think the best ones are really the clients that you don't have to sell to. So if you place first in a competition over and over again, well, you basically sell yourself. You don't have to say, "Hey, can I get clients?" People reach out and say, "Hey, wow, you're great.
yes,
Will you be on?" Like leads will just come to you as long as you show that you can do something. Like people have. It was mocked a year ago having DM for audits in your Twitter bio,
yeah,
and everyone was doing it. But if you're good, people just find you, and you shouldn't have to do any marketing. And if you amp up your marketing, it'll take more work, and you can probably get more clients. But yeah, as much money as you want to make in this industry can find you as if you are provably good at what you do.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So you were previously doing cybersecurity pen testing. Was that in kind of the Web2 space before you decided to jump ship?
Yeah, so for me, I had a pretty weird trajectory. So I failed high school, like my eighth grade.
Hell yeah. I
Then I
dropped out
was
too.
uh, like getting that back in like evening high school. So there was something in my country where you can do like a few hours in the evening to get your degree in the end. And I was working in a call center for about a year. Then after I had finished it, I started studying, went into mechanical engineering, and started working in a mechanical engineering corporation. Then did that for like 1 or 2 years. Realized like, hey, mechanical engineering is really not what interests me. But like I did a few like programming classes there, and I was like, hey, this is kind of fun. This is kind of interesting. And then I switched to computer science, started working in like sales or startup incorporation in the same company. So I was kind of their salesperson, like trying to find startups they can buy and invest in, which was like a super interesting but super unrelated job to what I currently did. And then, like, as I advanced further in my studies, I started getting into cybersecurity, started to get really deep into CTFing. And then I also started working in like pen testing at a separate, more traditional mechanical engineering company. So I was more helping them like pen testing ECUs and like
Mm.
looking just at C code of like these kind of programs, which was also super interesting. But yeah, then I finished that, and after I was doing that, I was like already deep into the whole CTF game, started learning about Web3 there. So I was just in playing CTFs every weekend with my friends at university, spent all weekend at the university, sometimes through the night, got super competitive into that. And then I realized like, hey, these like Web3 crypto challenges in CTF start popping up, and like no one of us knows how to do those. And also most other teams don't know how to do those because there's like no courses at university, and like almost no one is doing them. And then I was just like, hey, I need to carry my team up. And then I just started learning EVM and Solidity. And I think there was also already like a few Solana challenges, because I think OtterSec and Celic both are very related to CTFing. So they were already sponsoring CTFs and providing challenges there. So I just learned through those. I just looked at them, started finding them. And then after like half a year, I got pretty good at it. And then I stumbled across the legendary C. Michael post. And yeah, everything from that on is history.
So you were doing Web 2 CTFs before Web 3?
All of it. So most CTFs I was playing is like just standard university CTFs, and they have different categories. So they have like pawning, which is mostly focused on C stuff. Then they have reverse engineering, web, crypto, then traditional crypto, so cryptography, which is very math heavy. And at the beginning, I was just doing a bit of everything, but I was not really good at any of it. So at some point I thought like, hey, I need to specialize in some field. And there was this one field which my team didn't have like a good guy in, which was Web3. So I was like, I have to try this, because then I can become the specialist for this. And yeah, that's how I got into it at the end.
Let me ask you. So I also dropped out of high school, and I think back to why I did, and really it was a few factors, but one of them was I was bored. I didn't think anything that I was learning was applicable to what I wanted to do, which was work with computers, like computer programming. And so I dropped out at 16, and then went to college early at a technical school to pursue that path. So I'm curious, when you were in 8th grade, you weren't doing well, and you decided to quit. Like, what was going on there?
For me, I didn't quit willingly. So for me, the problem was I just failed French. I was pretty good in most other courses. So I was usually like one of those kids. Like I had like the lowest attendance of my whole class. I was there for maybe 40-50% of the year. Rest, I was like just chilling out at home doing other stuff. Then like the day before the exam, I just learned all of it in one day. Got usually like an A or a B on the exam, and then they had to let me pass. But the only way it didn't work was for French, because I don't know, like French has been my Achilles, what's it called, tendon?
Achilles heel. Yeah.
Achilles heel, yeah, exactly. So yeah, that just failed me hard. And then I had to like redo it. I was doing like a lot of tutoring, and I somehow passed with a D in the end. Since then, it has been really fun every time I go to France, because it's like the trauma is opening up again. But no, like for me, it was just like getting stuck there, finding some other way to wiggle around it, because I knew I wouldn't need it afterwards. And I was like always super interested in math and history, and also doing pretty decent in the other courses, just being lazy as fuck, but learning it all very quickly, because I was always a very quick learner. And yeah, that caught me there. I had to like kind of lose a year, but also in that year, just working like a very shitty job in a call center was a huge lesson for me. So I think that got me into the work drive that I have now, because I knew I never want to end up like this and do this for all my life.
Oh yeah.
So it was definitely worth it. Like I'm happy everything went the way it is, because I don't know if it would be the same now if I would have passed, for example, and would have never had to like work a really shitty job to get over. So I'm happy about it. In retrospect, back then I was saddened to the bone.
Of course. No, this is really funny, because your path, guys like that show up just for the exam and then ace it, these are high performing individuals. So you're speed running these classes, right? You're just showing up and saying, no problem. Like this, I'm far ahead of you guys on IQ. But then you made a big mistake trying to do that with a language, which I could see not working correctly. As my challenge is learning a second language, I understand that. So you just showed up trying to ace a French test.
The crazy thing is, it worked for 3 years. It only didn't work in the final year. That's the crazy part about it. But also, I don't know. I think like just French is a very hard language to learn. So, for example, my native language is German. So for English, it was way easier for me to learn. So I also got into it very young, because I lived in the US for some time. So I just had to learn it, being thrown into the water and learning to swim. But French was a whole different beast for me.
Right. It's interesting, man. That's pretty cool. So, well, you never know, man. I mean, and the biggest part I'm hearing there is like having a shit job and just having to deal with that and having to go through it. You're right, man. I think any adversity, and this is what I try to think about, like if you have kids or, when you look at the youth and life is so easy, especially if you're in America, life is as easy as possible as you want it.
Yeah.
But you have to find a way to introduce that adversity to the youth and on yourself when you're growing up. And you hate it when you're doing it, but then you get to reflect on it later and you're like, oh, well, I could do this because I used to do this shitty call center job for 2 years. And so this is nothing. I mean, it's mandatory, but it's like, it's a challenge now because life is so easy, especially when you work behind a keyboard doing what you love. You have to kind of seek those challenges out on your own.
I think it also grows you a lot as a human, like character-wise. So
Absolutely.
every person I encountered that had it always easy in their life, like rich parents, just finished high school, went to good university, got normal office job, like there was never big adversity. They also seem to grow a lot less character-wise than people that like have some adversities. And that doesn't just have to be like dropping out of high school. That could be sicknesses, that could be, I don't know, someone dying close to them, some other struggles that they get into. But I think every struggle that we get into and kind of grow out of grows us a lot as a human being. And like the people I like the most and that I usually can connect very well to also had some struggles in their life where they went down a bad path for whatever reason and dug themselves out again.
Absolutely. I've seen guys on here, and I remember this one guy in DeFi Summer. He was in his early 20s, and this guy's background was, just grew up kind of easy. And then he was making money on DeFi, trading this and that. And he'd post photos of him just ordering out every night. Like that was his achievement. Like, hey, look, I made it. I don't even need to cook. I could afford food to be delivered to my house every night. And you have this, it looked like slop. It was in the UK, but he's getting this food every night delivered. And, there's this perception that you won life if you can never leave your apartment and just don't have to go to a job because you make money online and you're chasing this opulence, this kind of hedonism and pleasure, and that ends up snorting coke, hookers, going down into just a path of despair and suicide, to be honest, because you hit the dopamine over and over and over again until it doesn't work anymore because you don't do anything else.
Yeah.
And it's a sad story. You see it all the time. So I completely agree. You got to have adversity, uh, just to prolong in this industry and in life, and continue to chase happiness effectively instead of the wrong way.
I think also you need to hardly differentiate between easy and hard dopamine because we're now in a
Oh yeah.
time where dopamine is just always available. If you just think about social media, like the unhealthiest, most dopamine raising food is the cheapest one. You can get just the shittiest fast food and pure sugar, and it won't cost you anything. And you can be on like government assistance and you can still afford that. And you can still get a phone and hang on TikTok all day. So there is no, I think before that it was always hard to get dopamine, or it was at least a lot harder. And the longer you go back in history, the harder it got to get dopamine. Because if you're like a cave dwelling person, like you could get a wife, you could eat food, you could hunt something. And I think that's pretty much all the choices you had. And all of those were probably pretty hard to get back then. But now you can just fry yourself with dopamine constantly. So if you don't have discipline, which unfortunately a lot of people lack, you can just continuously keep frying your brain with dopamine, and then you need to go like to the next hardest thing, and then to the next hardest thing, as you said before, with like coke and hookers and whatever. And at some point you reach the pinnacle where you can't like push yourself higher, and then those people crash and burn very fast.
So let me ask you this: how do you avoid burnout? Like for me, we're both in the same industry. I mean, the stream is constant. You can literally never log off. And so I deleted the X app from my phone. I don't really use the phone, and I try to keep everything on the computer. So when I close the computer, that's it. Like I'm not doing anything. Do you have any tactics or strategies you use to kind of balance this?
For me, I think the private audits have helped it a lot, to be honest. So when I started out and I was doing contests mainly, I probably spent my first 3 or 4 months just working nonstop, every weekend, every day, from like the morning I woke up till the evening. And then usually I woke up at night, checked like my escalations on, back then everything was still on GitHub for Code Arena, and it it worked for some time because I was 22, 23 at that point. So I think you can still take a lot of shit to your body then. Like you can still not sleep much, just work every day, and like it takes its time. But then after the 4 months, I was just done. So I had just started, was auditing for 4 months, had some small success stories, and then I was like just like sick. I was for a month, I couldn't really do anything. I was just lying around in my apartment, kind of cathartic, doing nothing but watching TV all day. Like every time I tried to look at my PC after like 20 minutes, my head started hurting.
Oh
And it
man.
was the first time I encountered burnout. And
Mm.
from that point on, I already started like squeezing in small breaks, like taking the weekends off, maybe taking a week off in between. And as I started going more into like the private audits, I was able to say like, okay, I'm going to work a normal 5-day week. I'm going to work Monday to Friday, going to give my all then. And then Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to chill out at home. I'm going to hang out with friends. I'm going to go to the gym, going to do whatever I want. And that has also helped me a lot. Besides that, on like the topic of X you mentioned, for example, I'm trying to like restrict all like the social media stuff. So I have, as like, for example, the reels is super scary, uh, and you can't really block them. Like they are everywhere. They're on YouTube, they're on Instagram, they're on X. I removed all of them and only have them in my browser. And there is an extension you can add in your browser that kind of filters out all those short videos. So, and for example, for X, I have it so it also filters out everything that is not from anyone I follow. So I just see the posts from people I want to see, and that's not that many that I follow. So, like if I check in there once a day, I see all the posts, and that's it. But I think you need to have a lot of discipline and build like your own systems. If you don't do that, especially like I encountered at the start, you just instantly hit the wall. So even if you're like a hardworking person, you're not lazy, this can also go into overdrive and kill you in the end.
Yeah, great description of burnout too. And people try to combat that instead of resting, down some more coffee or take, God forbid, like Adderall or any of these drugs. And man, your body's got to, it needs a rest. That's all it's telling you.
Yep.
So, very true, man. Yeah. What's the name of that extension? Because I used something before to kind of like filter out some of the screen on Twitter. It rewrites the HTML or something like that. Do you remember what you
It's called
use?
social focus.
Okay, that's a different one. Cool. Social focus. Interesting.
Yes.
Have to
So
check it
it's
out.
just like one extension for YouTube, Instagram, X, whatever you use. And you can just like set the bars, what you want in there, what you don't want in there. You can also just like gray out the whole site, remove all pictures and videos to make it even less interesting. And that way, like for me at least, I don't really have the urge to look at it too much anymore
All
because it
right.
just made it very unattractive. And that's good.
Cool. I forgot this is a security podcast. We should talk about some security. All right, we have to touch on the contest arc
Yeah,
right
for
now.
sure.
You've been doing the contest a long time, and I'm sure you're aware of a certain incident with a platform that won't be named. But tell us where we're at now. We know how it was in the past. What do you think about the contest landscape now? It looks like we have players changing ranks as far as who's getting more clients, where SRs are going. Do you kind of have an overview or anything relevant you'd like to talk about with the contest game?
I think it has changed a lot since I started. So back when I started, it was pretty much Code Arena and Sherlock. So Code Arena in the original version and Sherlock also in, I think back then they were also doing a bit more of insurance stuff than they're doing now, but I'm not too much, don't have too much information on that. So Cantina, for example, was not even around then. Immunify was not even around. I think Cypherin just started. And since then, it has rapidly shifted. For example, like scaled pods were not a thing back then. Custom rule sets were very few times. Also, it felt like pods were a lot bigger for smaller code bases. So it has shifted a lot. Also, with the current push from some platforms to just charge 0% fees. I think it also has changed the thing because it's now kind of a race to the bottom. And at the end, everyone's going to charge 0%, I assume, because how else can you compete with them?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also is going to reduce the amount of contests in the long term, because there's no real incentive for me as a platform to host contests. I mean, for sure, as a funnel to private audits, but there is not that much of a like monetary incentive anymore to host a contest than before, where you could probably charge like, I'm just assuming, I don't know how much any platform actually charges, but I would assume they charge like 20-30% probably for doing the contest. So if you're hosting like a 200-300K contest and you can make like 90K for just throwing the files on your platform and letting the judge do the work, then that's a perfect business opportunity. But now that you're not making that anymore and you have to handle all the overhead, I think it's definitely going to get less. I don't. The weird thing is I'm not seeing it right now, but logically, at least from my point of view, it should get less.
Yeah, it seems like something that can be honestly disrupted very easily because the platforms are kind of basic. The whole middleman idea of this. And I think what you're saying, they did the race to zero, allegedly. I don't know if there's backroom dealings going on with like, we'll host you, and then here's the pot, and then if we get these findings, we'll do some sneaky behavior. You kick us something on the back end. Honestly, I'm not accusing any protocol of doing that, but this could be happening. I don't know. Or they're just doing the competitions as a gateway to their audit product where they're going to make
I think
revenue
that's
there.
mostly the case. So that
Most
would,
likely.
at least for me, make the most sense, because then you can just upsell based on it. So you have your free offering, and on top of the free offering, you're upselling other stuff.
Yeah.
So that would be the most logical business explanation for me. I mean, for the other topics, I cannot really comment on that because I don't know anything.
It's a
And I
wild
also,
guess. I have no idea.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see where it evolves. I think they're really good for guys to get started, and it doesn't even matter what the pot is. Like if you're a new guy, it could be $5,000, but as long as
yeah.
it's a fair payout, and if you could walk away with $500 as a new guy for a finding, it's pretty cool. Like that's a really good incentive to get you started.
Yeah, especially if you compare it to traditional like Web2 audit or bounties, like the prices here are so much higher. So you could probably like cut them down to 10% of what they are, and people would still compete to just use it as a launch pad to get into private audits.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So, what's also kind of interesting, like I looked up your background and you're like a lot of guys just do Solidity and then they'll expand out from there to Rust or something like that. And you're all over the place. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, how many languages do you feel you're kind of proficient in auditing?
So for me, I also actually started with Solidity just because back then there was nothing else on the contest platforms. And I also started by doing Cypher and Updraft was not around back then. So I had to learn by doing these like small CTFs like Damn Vulnerable DeFi. There was Quill
I remember
CTF
that. Yeah.
and I think Mr. Steal Your Crypto or something like that. And I was just playing through all of these, trying to learn stuff. And then, like after half a year of audits or so, I stumbled across my first Rust contest. And I had never written anything in Rust before. I was just like, this is like a decent sized pot. I think it was like 100K or 150K. And I'm just going to try it for 4 weeks. I'm just going to try it for 4 weeks. And I'll just try to find the logic bugs and learn it along the way. And then I went really deep on that for 4 weeks. And in the end, I think, yeah, I won the contest. And I was like, hey, this is pretty interesting, and it also seems to be a pretty good strategy because there's not so many people doing these right now, especially back then, because like no one had an idea about Rust. By now, like, I would say probably 20 or 30% of contests are Rust. So everyone has at least dabbled their feet into it, and now they would try it. But back then, everyone was kind of scared of the Rust contests. So I was like, hey, this is a pretty good strategy, because if I'm competing on EVM contests, I'm competing with people that have been doing this for 5 years. But so they have a huge gap on me that I have to close up on them. But if I do the same thing on Rust contests, everyone is starting from scratch. And I know I'm pretty good at quickly learning stuff. So if I just set myself on things, I can very quickly learn the basics of them and get into the flow. So there I can use this skill of mine to outpace the other people that are also starting from zero. And that was my strategy for the rest of the year. And I think, I don't know like how many contests I won or placed top 3 in, but a lot of them. And I just really focused on that. I just really focused on just going everywhere where no one is going, or where everyone is starting from scratch. So starting new languages, starting new frameworks. And it was a pretty good strategy, because in the contest at the end, you're splitting the pot with the other people participating. So the fewer people that are participating, the better it is for you. And then if you have like a big difference to the others, you can get even more. But sorry, I kind of yapped away here. You asked about languages, actually. So I've been mostly doing Rust. So my key thing currently is Solana, I would say, doing Anchor audits, or also a traditional Solana, so without a framework. I'm also dabbling more into Cairo currently, which is also pretty interesting. Also did an audit there at the start of the year. Besides that, I also work with Substrate. So it's also Rust-based for Polkadot. Unfortunately, there is not that much traffic there, but it's pretty interesting to audit, because it's just not to be in there, but it feels to be kind of built to fail. So you can just mess up at so many edges there. And it's super interesting to audit. And I think like the last contest I did on Substrate was like 20 plus HM findings. Also won that one, by the way. That was
Nice.
And yeah, then besides that classic EVM, I also messed around with Cosmos a bit, which also very interesting. And the next thing on my checklist is currently learning Move. So Move is
Nice.
super interesting. There seems to be also more traction coming up there. And it's also very Rust-like, Rust-based. I think I did it once, like 2 or 3 years ago on some CTF challenges. So it should be quick to get into. And yeah, I just like doing weird languages, because the most fun part to me is learning the new language. So I love being just thrown into the water and learning to swim while doing it. So just make up some weird language, throw me in there, and I'll be good after a few weeks.
Make it up.
Yeah, just,
I know.
just I think brainfuck is the one that's just like dots and brackets and stuff. Maybe not brainfuck, but pretty much every other language you can.
There's a
throw me
language
into.
called brainfuck.
I think it's called brainfuck. Yeah, and it's just like special characters. So it's just like
Oh
dots,
my god.
brackets, exclamation marks, and has like 4. You can really. It's what's called like Turing compatible. So you can really write code in that.
This sounds like Perl.
Kind of, yeah. But even worse.
See, I see a trend though is that you're not like, oh, the Move competition's out there, I got to make some money on it. You're just like, hey, this looks really interesting, which is the key,
Yeah.
right? You have to be interested in it to really want to do that. Some people, they get really good at Solidity or Rust, whatever. And they're just like, this is it, man. I'm staying in my lane. I want to become an expert at it. And you're like, I want to speed run this, become an expert. And then I got to move on to the next one and then learn this too. But you're like, you have that interest driving you. And guys always ask me like, well, what should I learn? What, actually we had a Q&A, man, from this guy called China. And he's like, this is out for you. So he says, more material out there for Solidity versus Rust. Would you recommend sticking with Rust or switching to Solidity for more contests, or learning both? So while we're on this topic, what would you say to him?
I think you can definitely use the Solidity resources to learn a lot about higher level stuff. So how DeFi types work, how does an AMM work, how does a lending protocol work, how does a prediction market work. I think there's a lot of courses out there. So for example, I've also been mentoring a bit in the last year. And I recommend everyone to go to Cypher and Updraft first. Even if you want to go for Rust, learn the basics of a blockchain, you learn how an AMM works, how you exploit stuff there. And then when you have this basic knowledge, which is the best prepared for EVM currently, you can go over to Rust. It's not that hard. Like, I think a lot of people are scared of the jump, but it's not that hard if you have done some coding before. In the end, it's all code. The syntax might be a bit weird and it might take you a few weeks to get used to it. But when you understand how a blockchain works and how an AMM works and what you should check for on an AMM, you can do the exact same things in Rust. You might miss some very weird Rust specific bug, but 95% of bugs are not language specific. So even if you're not an expert yet, you can catch 95% of bugs usually. So my recommendation would be just like do Rust contests when they come along. That's the best way, just learn on the thing. But if you get stuck in between, either do EVM contests or use some of the courses to get better in your skills. So there's always shit to do. I think even if you want to focus on Rust, there should never be a day where you're like, oh, I don't have anything to do right now.
I'm going to qualify that as an alpha drop right there. What you just said about, can you say it again? 95% of bugs are not language specific.
Yes.
How true is that, right? You look through, because if I pick up Move, right, which I've never looked at, and from what you're saying, you can just read through it and kind of identify, because it's all human readable. They're high level. They're basically high level languages. And you could say, well, this logic doesn't, like this if then, this loop, like you could just see a logic error. Is that what you're referring to?
Exactly. So you recognize, okay, this is an AMM. Oh, they are checking their slippage, but they're checking their slippage, I don't know, before they withdraw the fees. And this is just like a random standard AMM bug that happens in every second contest. And you can also see that in Rust. You don't need to understand what type of struct they are using here or what type of integer they're passing. You're just reading through the code, understanding like the flow of what happens. And you see like, oh, they are checking the slippage too early. So just like very basic example.
Tip. Very good tip. Yeah, you don't have to know all the specifics of the language, but just a basic high level logic error can get missed. Can get missed a lot of the time that you could pick out. Now that's very good, man. I love that because I've started looking at Rust recently. We have our AI tool that we use.
That's really cool.
It is cool, man. I should show you some findings, but we're running it on Rust. And I'm like, okay, I need to kind of look through these findings to make sure they're legit. And so I start reading Rust and everything. And the cool thing I've noticed about it, like dealing with Solana, is there's another interesting vector that you think about, and that's compute. So normally in Solidity, you don't think about that. You just, it's EVM, it's on the blockchain, pay for gas, everything. But with Solana and Rust, it's like, oh, you can kind of exhaust the compute. You can crash these things. You like this kind of like traditional program running on your computer. That aspect comes back into mind. You're like, oh, this is a whole new level of things that can kind of go wrong.
Yes, for sure. So you have different attack vectors for each of these things, which makes it very interesting. So also to circle a bit back to the Polkadot substrate, for example, they have a very weird system that's also just instant way to farm mats on any contest is they don't so the contracts are run on your own chain, so you have to maintain this and, for example, the storage and the compute also. And when you're running a function, you're not having it broken down into assembly commands and giving like a gas value to each of them. You yourself as the developer have to figure out how much this function will use in the worst case, and then just write like a thing above the function, like this uses 40,000 gas. But if you mess up there, and for example, there's a way to like, I don't know, let a for loop run forever and just then break out at the end, it will burn like 100 times that gas, but it will only charge the user that amount. So he will be able to like mess with your compute units. And like there's like these specifics for each of these languages, and that's super interesting because they are all usually a cool way to farm bugs. Or for Substrate 2, you have to maintain the storage yourself. So if you're not charging the user per like storage write he writes to correctly, like he can just fill up your storage, force you to maintain like 2,000 terabytes, I don't know, 2 million terabytes, whatever, and just completely crash your chain. So there's so many interesting ways to mess around in these different languages, which makes it more fun to me, because EVM is already
Absolutely.
very secure in most ways. So
Yeah.
there's not as much to find, and not as much cool like new ways to find stuff.
Yeah. All right. So my alpha drop here is based on this. So if you are been focusing on Solidity Viper, and you're kind of getting bored because you eventually see almost everything, right? There's only so much you could do. And I would say you have to look at cross chain composability and backends, and then it just, there's so many more different problems to solve, and there's bugs that go with those problems. But you get to introduce yourself to a whole new host of different things to look at, which will really kind of keep you interested in the security space. I know that happened for me. Just kind of, you look at Solidity, you're like, oh, there's, and like you said, it's it's pretty secure. Like, we know the behaviors, the bugs that we find mostly are obvious in hindsight, right? But there's more unique, interesting bugs to me when I look at the cross chain composability stuff than just looking at smart contracts right now.
Yes, for sure. It
Yeah.
also just opens up new new venues of attack, and that's what keeps it interesting. Because if you're doing contests and you're looking at the 20th ERC for 626 vault, and
Hmm.
you, at some point it just gets boring. And for me, I'm a
Yeah.
person, I hate doing the same thing all the time. So I just love constantly being in a new field. So that's like already what contests kind of do for you. But if you need even more edge there, it makes it even more interesting if you're just jumping between languages and jumping between different chains. So you never get bored. And that's what makes it so much fun to me, that I'm constantly in a process of like, hey, I need to learn this. I need to understand this. It's something new. I never get to a point where I'm complacent and I'm like, oh, I know all of this. I'm going to go over my checklist and now I'm done.
Hmm. Would you, since I think you're very very good on Rust, is there anything you could share, like a certain thing that you would check on all Rust based projects, like one thing that you always look into that maybe you've seen commonly when reviewing?
For Rust specific, I wouldn't say. I mean, each of the like change has their own like classical bugs. So if you would say, I don't know, for Solana, for example, or for Substrate, they definitely have their average bugs. But most of the frameworks really cushion out Rust for you. So you cannot really mess up that much in Rust itself. You usually mess up within the framework.
Can you expand on that a bit, like for a non Rust expert?
So, for example, for Rust, one thing would be the ownership. So, for Rust, you're transferring ownership between different entities of the struct or object or integer, whatever, which you can mess up a lot in traditional Rust programs. So, I also haven't audited that much traditional Rust programs, so I'm not an expert on that topic. But for example, if you look at the Solana frameworks, they already manage all that for you. So if you use Solana, the ownership or the liveness of the values just stays mostly during the whole call, and the compiler is already warning you if you're doing something wrong. So there is not that many ways to fuck up like the traditional Rust bugs. But in return for that, you get a lot of new bugs from the framework, where you can misuse the framework, where you can do something wrong in the framework. And yeah, so I would say more that there's like very traditional bugs. And those, for example, would be for Substrate, the ones I explained before with like the gas or the storage. And for
Okay.
Solana, a big thing is just account passing. So as you've already looked at the Rust code now, I think you know kind of how Solana and Anchor work. You have this very cool system which allows for multi-threading, where you pass the accounts that you will write to or read at the start of the transaction, so the nodes can know which ones they can execute in parallel. Super cool idea, in my opinion. At the beginning, I didn't really get it, and I was like, "Why the hell are they doing this? EVM is so much nicer and cleaner." And then I realized, like, hey, this makes it possible to run, I don't know, 50,000 in parallel if it works well, which is super cool. But the problem is you yourself has to restrict what the user is giving you there. So the user can pretty much provide any address he wants. And let's say you have a lending protocol, and then you get like a separate account which tracks how much your balance currently is in the lending protocol and how much you have lent out. So you would, for example, pass the account, and for the lending protocol program, and then your card, you can imagine it like that, which says how much you currently have in that protocol. But you could pass anything there. So you could just make up your own account somewhere else that looks the same, throw it in there and let it pass. So you have to do all these checks yourself to ensure that this is the right card that was created by your program and is for you, because otherwise you could pass someone else's card. And so you do a lot of the Solana code is just restricting these accounts and checking that the correct accounts are passed, that they have the correct type, the correct structure, they were created by the correct person. And this adds a lot of overhead, and it's very easy to miss something there. So whenever I review something in Solana, I spend a lot of time looking at these constraints, checking if they missed any small one, because they need to do it on every function for every account. And sometimes they have 10 or whatever constraints for one single account. And if they just miss one on one of the versions, then they're already in a problem again. So this is just like an infinite pool of findings, if usually.
That sounds interesting. And I'm just try to use this as a proxy, like where Open Zeppelin is standardized a lot of things where people roll in their own crypto for repeatable tasks. But this sounds like this has to be custom for each protocol, for each Rust program, because it's a unique use case. Is that right?
Yes, so Anchor takes a bit of the work away from you. If you look at traditional Solana, before Anchor was around, you really, at the start of every function, you have if you have many accounts, you have 50 if clauses, which check each of these single requirements and revert if one of them is not met, which is super ugly and also very annoying to write. Now, Anchor added this framework where you can kind of customly define these in the header of the file, which makes it a bit cleaner, and also does some of the basic checks already for you. So it checks that these accounts were created by your program, if you said that these accounts have signed the transaction, whatever. You can just very easily verify it there, but you still need to write a lot of these. So it takes away probably 50% of the clauses you have, but everything else you still need to define yourself. So, and it's also very hard to completely automate that, like an Open Zeppelin would do, because it's just very dependent on the case. So I don't think there is much more than the Anchor stuff already does that you could standardize. So this is definitely going to stay a big area for finding bugs in the future.
Very cool. That's interesting to know. Well, take that to heart, everyone who's listening. Check it out. Hey, I wanted to ask you one other thing. Actually, a couple more things before we wrap. We have another question from K42, and he says, what actionable tips can you give to acquire more private clients? And we kind of touched on this, using your results from contests, stuff like that. Do you have anything specific you'd like to share?
I think it really depends which area you want to go into. If you want to work with the agencies, I think for both, if you want to work with the agencies or if you want to have private clients. So I think in both cases, winning contests is the best thing you can do. Getting good results, showing them publicly, and doing this continuously is the best thing you can do. On top of that, for getting into the agencies, I think it's definitely helpful to just get to know the people that work in them. Just get to know them, show yourself as a person at a conference or event. That definitely helps you there. And for private clients, I can't give that much advice because I don't do it as much as we talked about before. But I think also just in-person things will definitely be helpful. So I know that a lot of the salespeople just go to a lot of these events, talk to the projects there, get to meet the people. So pretty classic. I think also one person that we know that is really, really good at that is Pashov, who's really good at marketing himself on Twitter.
Shout out to Pashov.
Yeah. So I think you can definitely learn a lot from his strategy, especially if you look back. He started also just doing audits and was just very good at marketing himself, showing his skills, showing what he's doing. And now he's running a very successful agency from what I'm seeing. So I think that's definitely where you can learn a lot from.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's good points. So last thing I want to ask you is, because I also did this for 1 year, and I found that doing it for a year, I was actually finding lots of bugs, and it was on a little 13-inch Dell XPS, traveling across the world as kind of the nomad. Except I was doing it with my family. But having that little laptop, I found so many bugs, and I was just like locked in at a cafe in Japan or wherever I was. You did this for a year as well. I'm curious how that went as far as productivity. Is that better than a multi-monitor home setup? Like, how did you find it?
Definitely. So I think both have their benefits. But I also was just traveling with a small laptop, and it gives you a different kind of focus. It gives you a different kind of focus, and also you can cut out a lot of the noise if you're traveling. You don't have to, I don't know, take care of your apartment, go to these events, go, I don't know, shopping, whatever. You're just somewhere in the middle of nowhere. You're traveling, you don't really know anyone, so you can really lock in. And for me, that was really great because it was pretty much at the start of my journey in auditing. Like, as I told you, it was pretty much exactly after the month where I kind of burned out. I took like 1 month more in Europe, and then I flew away to just get into something new. And it was definitely the time where my career kind of took off. So I had some smaller results before that, but then I went just like on a winning streak, getting top three on pretty much every contest. I think I was like on a 4 or 5 contest winning streak, getting good results every single time. And I attribute a lot of that to being able to focus so much while being on my own. And it was just an awesome experience. So I was, I think, 23 at that time. I had never really been to Asia, for example. I only went to the US once, and otherwise I was only in Europe. And also that was usually with my parents. So at that time I was just out on my own in a random new country. I don't speak the language, I don't know anyone. And I think I grew a lot through that mentally, just by once again throwing myself kind of into the water and learning to swim. But it was such an awesome experience. And I think after some time, you also kind of burn out from the lifestyle just because you're jumping from Airbnb to Airbnb and never having a place to like settle down. But it's an awesome experience that I would recommend to everyone that has the financial means, or, for example, is starting out auditing, gets their first, I don't know, 5-10K win. Like, Southeast Asia is so cheap. You can live for 200-300 bucks a month in a nice apartment. You pay like one USD for a good meal. You have a very good arbitrage there. So just go there, lock in for a year, save all the money that's left over, and you'll be in a whole different place a year later.
Oh my God, this is great tips, man. I would completely second this, as especially as a young guy, because get your first cash and roll out and just do it, man. I mean, this is great life experience, and it's not the digital nomad thing where you're like, okay, back in the day it was a bit more of a negative to this, because you, if you worked for a company and you worked remotely, then you don't have this FaceTime at the office or something that you may need to move up in your organization. But with doing what we do, it doesn't matter where you are. And so you could reduce your costs to nothing. And I would just maybe change this a bit to how I did it. You know, you could do it with the family too, but pick like 1 month and stick to one place for a month and then move. That way you don't get burnt out too much with, you know, constantly moving and changing places, but just say, hey, I'm going to Kyoto for 1 month. All right, now I'm going to wherever. And it kind of makes it more doable. You may eventually get burnt out and want to go home, but I think the biggest source of burnout when doing that nomad stuff is the constant checking in, checking out,
Yeah.
and travel associated with it.
I think also what makes it so enjoyable to me is I'm not a big like standard tourist guy. So going to a place for 5 days, checking out all the sightseeing and going home again. What I really like is going to a different place and like living a normal life there. Sitting in my apartment, going to the cafe, going to the supermarket, maybe not doing a single sightseeing thing, but just like living life like someone there would live it. That's such a unique experience, and that makes it possible with digital nomading. I don't like the term of digital nomading too much, because usually if someone tells you they're a digital nomad, it's like some cringe guy selling courses, how to become a course seller, and you usually don't want to be associated with those. But the idea by itself is awesome, in my opinion, especially if you don't have much holding you. And in your case, you even did it with family. So it's even still possible if you have kids, if you have a wife. So I think it's an experience definitely everyone should make. I don't know if it needs to be for a year, but even if you do it for 3 months, just spend a month in Thailand, spend a month in, I don't know, Brazil or Argentina, spend a month maybe somewhere in Eastern Europe, and then go back home. It will be such a crazy experience if you only lived in the US or Germany before.
Absolutely.
So yeah, high
I'll end
recommendation.
I'll end with anything is possible. Every day you wake up, you could choose any path you want and you can do it. It's really
Yes.
it's up to you. So thank you, J4X, for coming on. It was a pleasure having you. We will
Thank
see
you very much.
everyone next time on the blockchain.